But first, back in 2007, Kevin Rudd promised he'd be tough on borders, and we all know how that turned out. On Labor's watch, almost 1,000 illegal boats, more than 50,000 illegal arrivals and more than 1,000 deaths at sea before the Abbott government stopped the boats with Operation Sovereign Borders. With another boat full of people claiming asylum arriving on the West Australia coast last week, on top of the boat that arrived here last November, and the 11 other boats that have been intercepted since the election, so that's 13 boats so far, are we about to see another Labor government lose control of our borders? Today in Perth, the Prime Minister aggressively tried to insist that nothing had changed since the Coalition's time.
People who arrive by boat get sent offshore. That's the measures we're put in place, together with boat turnbacks, redepositing people back in other places. Those measures are all in place.
But of course, it has changed. The boats have started up again, and that is there for all to see. And we've got a leader, as we saw in this shocking response from Anthony Albanese on Friday, who was just not across the big issues that Prime Ministers must be.
Prime Minister, we're hearing that an asylum seeker boat has arrived off to the Western Australian coastline. Do you know anything about that?
I've been travelling in the car, so I'm not. I haven't been advised about that.
So that's just wrong. Now let me tell you, because I know how it works. I've been there with the Prime Minister. When a boat arrives or any other significant security threat is known, senior staff in the Prime Minister's office and the Prime Minister's department, now they get a call. Day or night, 2 a.m. in the morning, it doesn't matter, you get that call. And travelling in the car with the Prime Minister is always his security detail. More often than not, a couple of senior staff as well. Now, if the PM's phone wasn't on, the staffer gets the call. And if the staffer's phone is off, well, believe me, it's never off. You work for the PM, you've always got your phone on. Then the Federal Police will get a call, or the police car radio is used if all else fails. But more than that, before he did that press conference, the Prime Minister's office, all the media minders, would have been on the phone, checking back with the Canberra team about any issues likely to crop up from the media. So if by some miracle they missed the call in the car, they would never have missed prepping for that question in a press conference. Now, what you saw here was a weak tactic, one that Rudd often used when under pressure. Rudd used to say, and you'll remember, "Oh, I haven't read those reports. I haven't been briefed on that claim," or "I don't know what you're referring to," when, of course, the issue had been in the headlines all day. And that tactic to avoid media scrutiny is no more plausible today than it was in Rudd's time. Having been the Minister in charge of Australia's border security, Peter Dutton today didn't miss.
You've got a Prime Minister who is asleep at the wheel. You've got a situation where Labor doesn't believe in Operation Sovereign Borders, and a situation, obviously, where they are going to lurch from one disaster to the next because people smugglers know that this Prime Minister is leading a weak and incompetent government.
And look, he's right, people smugglers are testing Labor's resolve. It's true, as the Prime Minister claims, that Operation Sovereign Borders does remain in place, but that's more about the brand name than anything else, because temporary protection visas have long been abolished and the operational tempo of our border patrols seems to have diminished. Now, given what I know of the then frequency of surveillance flights over our seas to the north, it's hard to imagine a boat big enough to carry nearly 50 people arriving on our coast undetected while the Abbott version of Operation Sovereign Borders was at its height.
It's inconceivable that a boat of this size, carrying 40+ people, could make it to the mainland without there being any detection. And the Prime Minister carried on with some stupid story about his phone not working in the car and he couldn't be contacted. He was caught completely by surprise.
If the government's serious about keeping our borders secure, it's clear that aerial surveillance does need to be increased, because every boat that gets here, even if the occupants then go on to Nauru, gives the people smugglers something to offer to thousands waiting in Indonesia for a chance at life in Australia. And that's the question, isn't it? I mean, is the government serious about keeping our borders secure? We know that Anthony Albanese, when he was an opposition frontbencher, opposed boat turnbacks.
And when we talk about boats, of course, we're talking about people on boats. I'm of the view that I would just find out, I couldn't ask someone else to do something that I couldn't see myself doing. And if people were in a boat, including families and children, I myself couldn't turn that around.
We also know that Immigration Minister Andrew Giles, when he was a lawyer before Parliament, acted for the Tampa boat people. And as an MP, Giles said that immigration detention for those here illegally should only ever be a last resort.
Labor government will reverse the coalition's attempts to undermine international law, will double Australia's annual humanitarian intake. Labor will get children out of detention, will abolish temporary protection visas, which have been proven to cause mental harm. And as we now push the Turnbull government to ensure that people who've sought asylum in Australia are afforded the benefit of the international human rights obligations we've committed to, and that this is subject to proper independent oversight, we will ensure, when we are in government, that these standards are met.
I was in the room when the Abbott government took office and had to deal with a Labor-created crisis on our borders. The only one of the dozen or so senior border protection officials who really thought the boats could be stopped and who really wanted to do it, well, that was Mike Pazzulu, a former Labor staffer, and the Labor government under Albanese sacked him last year. Now, I hope my hunch is wrong and that the PM and his minister have had a real change of heart since those days I've just played you, and that they're now seriously converted to the necessity of never again giving people smugglers a product to sell. But how many middle-aged leopards do you know that change their spots? Now, deep down, I suspect Labor do not believe in secure borders. Deep down, especially those in the left faction, like the Prime Minister, like Giles the Immigration Minister, they think anyone who can get to Australia should be able to stay. Now, if we want the boats to stop and to stay stopped, good policy and effective practice has got to be in the hands of people who believe in it. And right now, I fear that weakness might be opening the floodgates yet again.